Hello, friends. Welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining me today for another near-death experience interview today with Randy Schiefer. Randy had a total of 4 near-death experiences, which he's going to share with us today. And I find his story very interesting, first of all, because his experiences are different in some ways than others I've heard, and also because he received a confirmation in his 4th experience. He received a message for someone and he was later able to confirm this. So today we're going to hear about his first 3 experiences. And then tomorrow in part 2, we will learn about his 4th very interesting experience and how he was later able to confirm it. Randy holds a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology and a Master of Forensic Science degree. He spent 20 years in the United States Air Force as a security policeman and as a special agent in the Office of Special Investigations. He retired in 1992. From the Air Force, Randy started teaching at the collegiate level, entering as an adjunct instructor and working his way to department chair, and finally as a college campus director. He retired again in 2014 and moved to Florida in 2015. In March 2020, Randy caught the COVID-19 virus and spent 6 weeks in the hospital. 3.5 weeks were spent in a medically induced coma on a ventilator on dialysis, and finally on extracorporeal membrane oxygenation machine. With Randy's heart beginning to fail, he was given a 3% chance of surviving, but the ECMO and convalescent plasma ultimately saved his life. While in the coma, Randy had his near-death experiences. His email will be in the description. He is currently writing a book which is not published, but when he has it finished, he's going to send me the link, and I will also put that in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Here's Randy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me today. I am very excited to be here with Randy Schiefer, who has had 4 near-death experiences, and he would like to share those with us today. Thank you so much for joining me, Randy.
Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to share my journey with everyone. So thank you.
I am so excited to hear about it. So would you like to start by sharing your near-death experiences in whatever order you would like?
Okay, yeah. Let me begin with how this all started. I guess back in March of 2020, I contracted the corona-19 virus, and I went to my doctor because I was sick, and I thought, okay, I probably had the flu. And I went to my family practice doctor, and that's exactly what he told me. He goes, "Oh, you have the flu, and just go home and rest." I said, this feels like it's more than I'm sick. And I said, "Can I get tested for this COVID?" No, you've got the flu. Go home. So 2 days later, I was worse, and I went back and was able to see a physician assistant, and he told me the exact same thing. I have the flu. Go home and rest. No, you can't get tested. And remember, this is March of 2020, so it was very, very early on when COVID first came out. Well, the next day, my wife had to run out of town to take care of some errands for my younger daughter, and my oldest daughter came by the house to check on me. And now my youngest daughter's a nurse, so when my oldest daughter, her name's Erin, saw me, she called Lisa, the nurse, and said, "Dad really looks bad. What should we do? He looks gray. He's bad." She said, "Get him to the emergency room." So I remember going down to the emergency room, and I walked in and told the lady behind the desk, I said, I'm sick. I said, please help me. And my daughter, Erin, took me there. She wasn't allowed in to the hospital. So she said, "Okay, Dad, I'll wait in the car for you." She said, "Just text me when you want me to come pick you up." Well, little did I know that would be the last time I would see a family member for almost 6 weeks. So they admitted me in critical condition with bilateral pneumonia, and I immediately tested positive for corona. and it was the corona glass was all to my lungs. My lungs were just filled with it. So within a little over 24 hours, they did an emergency intubation on me and put me in a coma at that time. And within another 24 hours, I had maxed out the ventilator. So they care flighted me over to a larger hospital here in Northwest Florida, where I went straight on to an ECMO machine. I'm not sure if you ever heard of that or not, but it's like a heart-lung bypass. They go in through the right jugular down into your heart, and then they pump the blood out, and it gives your heart and your lungs an opportunity to rest and heal. So I was on the ECMO machine for 21 days, and my kidneys failed, so I went on dialysis. My liver started to enlarge, and very high enzymes started to throw blood clots, and my heart enlarged and started to not pump adequately. And then good old COVID hit my veins, and I started vascular bleeding as well, and got some blood products. And so it says in my medical records that they notified the family of my probable demise, and that I had about a 3% chance of survival. So I was pretty sick and in a coma that whole time. And in the meantime, unbeknownst to me, I was laying there obviously in a coma, and my daughters were working behind the scene to try to get me convalescent plasma. My youngest daughter, Lisa, had heard about it through a friend of hers, and she talked to her friend's father, who was a doctor up in Kentucky, and he said, get him convalescent plasma, whatever you do, get it for him. So she went to the hospital and said, we want Dad to have convalescent plasma. And the hospital said, no, we're not a teaching hospital, we're not a training hospital. It's not something that we would do. So she said, well, this is what we want. The family wants him to get this plasma. So they finally said, well, if you can figure out how to do it, we'll consider giving it to him. So my wife and my daughters had a meeting in the living room, and each girl took on a task. Erin, the oldest, was in charge of the prayer chain. She set up prayers in, about 45 states and 4 countries around the world that were praying for me. Kate, my middle daughter, she took to social media and put out a request for convalescent plasma, trying to find a match for me from somebody that had COVID, healed, and had the antibodies. And it went out to over 75,000 people read that message. So they had a tremendous amount of volunteers that were willing to travel to Florida to give me their plasma. So our local blood donation center is One Blood, and they were working hand in hand with One Blood, and they had to get some people trained to take the plasma. And they finally called and said, okay, we got the plasma and it's at the hospital. So they called the hospital to see when I would be receiving it. And the hospital said, no, we're not going to give it to him. We decided that it's unethical, and we don't know how he's going to respond to receiving bloodborne products. And of course, I said, Lisa's a nurse, so she fired right back at him. And she said, look, he's already had blood. He's already had plasma. Those are blood products. Give him this plasma. It's just a blood product. So after a long debate and several hours later, they called and said, okay, we're going to go ahead and give it to your dad. And that was on Good Friday of all days of 2020. I think it was April the 10th. And they gave me convalescent plasma that on Good Friday. On Easter, they were able to turn off the ECMO machine. My lungs that were full of COVID glass completely healed. They were clear. My lungs were fully functioning. 2 days later, my kidneys returned to normal. They took me off dialysis. Liver, heart, everything returned right back to normal with no scarring, none at all. I have full use of my lungs. I have my liver, kidneys, heart, they're all unscarred by all of this. So it's a miracle, an absolute miracle that I am here. And they actually called my daughter once I made this quick turnaround, and they asked her how she got the convalescent plasma. And she told them, and they started giving them to other patients that were on the ward with me. So little beknownst to me, obviously I was in a coma, that was happening kind of behind the scenes. But I remember when I was in the coma, and I want to make this point for people because I always read, well, you know, my relative, my father, my mother, someone is in a coma, can they hear me? And I'm here to say yes, they can. I heard my nurses. I heard conversations from my nurses. I could see. I remember distinctly this one young nurse named Mallory. She wore a big black gas mask type of thing when she came in to see me. And as soon as I heard her voice, I knew that I was going to be in good hands for the day. She was one of my angels that came and took care of me. I just knew I was going to be okay. And I did have a conversation, complete conversation with a nurse that evidently doesn't exist. After I came out of the hospital, I wanted to go back to thank everyone that saved me. And I asked Mallory, I said, where is the older lady? She was from the Tampa Bay area, south of us. And she had white hair, older lady with white hair. I think she had glasses. And she would come in every day and just rub my hand and talk to me. And I said, did she, you know, it was, so Mallory said, well, was she gloved or did she have PPE on? Or I said, no. I said, she didn't have any PPE on, you know, the mask and the gown, no gloves. It was skin to skin contact. I could feel her rubbing my hand. And she told me, she said, well, Mr. Schiefer, he says, you know, you had tubes down your throat, you know, and a feeding tube down your nose. She said, there's no way that you could have talked to anybody. And I said, well, I had this whole conversation then with a nurse that didn't exist. And I've talked to a lot of other people that are more experienced in near-death experiences than me, and they think it could be very possible that an angel came down and comforted me and stayed with me during that time, that difficult time. But when I was in that coma, I remember my consciousness came to life. And I was in a dark tunnel. And I was moving through the tunnel, not real fast, but I was moving through this tunnel. And the tunnel was encased with light. You could see it, you know, the tunnel had like almost little windows that you would see on an airplane, you know, every once in a while. And as I passed these windows, you could see the light outside, but the light didn't penetrate in because the tunnel was dark. And I was going through, and I knew I had died. I mean, I said to myself, "You're dead. Where are you traveling to?" And this came from a man that feared death. I was a criminal investigator for over 40 years. My master's degree is in forensic science. And that was my job, to investigate death. Been to more autopsies than I could count. That was my specialty. But I could not speak of my own death. I would actually go into full-blown panic attacks, screaming, pounding, stomping. I just lost control whenever I thought about my own personal death. But I was so at peace in that tunnel that none of that even dawned on me. And I traveled through that tunnel, and I exited, and I was in this beautiful golden room. It was a very large hall. It was absolutely stunning. It was it, it glowed. It was so beautiful. The walls were all in different tones of gold. There were big chandeliers in the middle of the hall. The hall on top was outlined with big stained glass windows, and there were water features throughout the hall. There were big archways. I remember seeing three on each side going down, and it looked like from the archways it would lead. There were tunnels that led into maybe a different portion of this great hall. It was absolutely beautiful, with just opaque floors and golden walls and chandeliers. And I was standing there like on a mezzanine overlooking the floor, and I could tell that there was a lot of hustle and bustle going on. I felt it, but I couldn't see anything or anybody at the time. But then suddenly this spirit came up to me, and we talked briefly about the beauty of the room, and I remember him telling me that it was one of their most favorite places that people like to visit, and how beautiful it was. And an older man. I think he had a beard and long hair, and he was dressed in a dark colored robe. And he says to me, he said, "You don't belong here." He said, "You have to leave." And he pointed over to some beautiful large oak doors, just magnificent, huge oak doors, and looked like they were carved, and they were all outlined with gold squares, going around these oak doors. And I remember going over to those doors, and I pushed it open, and I walked down a few steps, and I was in this beautiful city, this magnificent city, large, tall buildings, all in the roadway was just like an opaque color, and the buildings seemed to just go forever. And they were all outlined in gold and glass, and it was just absolutely beautiful. I remember my consciousness moving down the streets, and I was passing parks, and the parks were just meticulously kept. They were gorgeous, and there were just green grass and beautiful trees and flowers, and I've been to the Highlands of Scotland and Ireland. I've seen some green grass up there, but this was so green and magnificent, nothing like we have here on Earth. It was just beautiful. And there were a few people and things in the park I remember at a distance, not sure what they were doing, but I remember that then they were there. So I continued to walk through this city, taking in the sights, and I suddenly realized that I was lost, and I didn't know how to get back, and I got scared, and I continued to walk, and I got scared, and I got frightened, and I was so tired and worn out and I kept saying to myself, "No one's going to find me. How am I going to get back? I'm lost. I'm lost." So I sat down, and I remember people passing me, or orbs of light passing me, and I was kind of calling out, "Help, help," but they wouldn't answer. So, not. I guess I wasn't supposed to be there, so they couldn't help, or they couldn't hear me because I wasn't there to them. And suddenly I remember looking over my shoulder, and I saw this beautiful white staircase going up as far as the eye could see. And I said, well, if I can get over to that staircase and crawl up somehow, maybe I can get high enough that someone will see me and be able to save me. So I did that. I made my way over, and I started to climb this staircase, this beautiful white staircase. And I had no idea how far I got. I don't know how I was. I don't know where I was. But I was climbing this white staircase. And off to the sides, there was just like, it wasn't a void because it was a beautiful blue sky I remember seeing on both sides of the staircase. And suddenly I heard somebody yell, "There he is. There's Randy. Get him." It was just like they grabbed me by my shirt collar and just whisked me off of that staircase. And I said, I just returned right back into my dark little sedated world. My consciousness had gone black. And remember, I do not know the sequence of any one of these NDEs. I don't know which came first, second, third. I just no clue. So I remember my consciousness waking up at some point again, and I was back in that city. I got kicked out once, but my soul came back. It was a little pesky guy. He wanted to go there for some reason, because the doctors did say that I was sitting on that razor's edge of death. I could have gone either way. I never died, but I was very, very close. And so I found myself back in that city, and I started again walking around, and suddenly I said, well, I'm lost, but I know where those staircases are. So I made my way back to that staircase, and again, beautiful white staircase going up into the sky. And I started to climb that staircase, hoping that somebody again would find me. And sure enough, that same voice, same wording, "There's Randy, get him." And I turned this time because I wanted to see who was grabbing me. And I turned, and it was an older gentleman, not the gentleman I saw inside the Great Hall, but again, he had white hair and a beard and a white robe that he had on this time. And he's the one that was grabbing me, pulling me back off of those steps and returning me back to my body, and back to life. So that was, I get asked a lot that, well, why would God allow you to suffer in that situation? Why would he allow you to experience fear and being so tired and scared and lost? And I think he had to do that to me, because my father died when I was very young. I was 16 years old when my father died, and his death had a tremendous impact on me. One that I didn't realize until these near-death experiences happened. One that I just never dealt with. But it was my father's death that actually encouraged me to get into law enforcement and to become an expert in death investigations. And it was his influence that did that to me. But we weren't very religious family. When we moved to Florida from Pennsylvania, we basically stopped going to church. And I remember we never really prayed or really talked about God. And then when my family died, or my father died, my mom was really angry at God. And because I can remember her he died of a heart attack. And I can remember her being in the emergency room, really cussing and swearing at God that he took her husband. And so that really further pushed us away from any type of a religion or any type of spirituality. So I basically lost God. I remember going a few times to, growing up in South Florida, I remember going to a few sunrise services over on the beach. But that was usually to impress some girl that I was trying to date. But that was the extent of my religious. Never read the Bible. Even when I got married and had my three girls, they went to Catholic school like their mother did. But I didn't get involved, if you will, with the church. I always remained at a distance because I just lost so much. My sister died very tragically. And again, I just lost that connection. So when I tell this to people, I tell that story only because they understand where I was religiously, spiritually, when God allowed me to experience fear and in heaven, because He had to. He had to let me experience that so I would be found. And it's just like the lost sheep in the Bible. The shepherd goes out to find that one lost sheep and is so proud he found that one lost sheep. Well, that was me, and that's why He allowed me to experience that, to let Him know. Being a cop, my world evolves around physical evidence. I have to have something tangible to believe. I don't live in a circumstantial world. And so God had to give me that physical evidence of fear and being found again. So, and I say that only because, my relationship now, I'm much more spiritual and have reconnected in a very, very strong way with God. I remember another time when my consciousness awoke, and I was walking down this dirt pathway, and my consciousness was moving down this pathway. And this dirt pathway was lined with these beautiful flowers and trees and shrubs, and just so beautiful. And I remember walking down knowing that I had died, not knowing where I was going, but commenting on how at peace I felt and how calm I felt and how loving I felt. And I was just happy to be there. Well, suddenly out of nowhere, this little boy appears, and he's very, very animated. He's jumping around and waving his arms. And he was a little boy. He had no shirt on, olive skin, had what we call the bowl haircut. It was cut right down to the top of his eyebrows, and little shorts, pair of shorts on. He was barefoot, very animated. And he comes out and he goes, "Follow me, follow me, follow me." So I did. I followed him. And it was a while, but we went into this building, and he says, "Wait in this room. Go wait there." He says, "I'll be back." So I'm in this room was again just beautiful. It had gold pictures and big red leather pedestal chairs. And I noticed a picture window off in one of the walls, and I walked over to this picture window, and I'm looking out on this beautiful stream that flowed underneath this building, and it meandered off into the distance. And it too had this beautiful foliage on the sides of this riverbank. And I remember commenting how gorgeous it was and how peaceful it made you feel. And there were a few people, I remember 4, maybe 6 people in the water, not frolicking around and playing, but they were on the edge, the bank's edge, it looked like they were talking or something. And time is not relevant, so I have no idea how long I stood there and watched the river, or even how long I was in the room. But after some time, the little boy comes back, and he says, "I'm sorry, you have to leave." And I said, "But why?" I said, "I feel so at peace and so calm and so beautiful. I don't really want to go back." And he goes, "No, I'm sorry. Your room isn't ready yet. You have to leave." And with that, I went back into my dark, elucidated world. But God had not prepared that room for me. So my room is still empty in heaven. No one's there to fill it. And that's a good thing. So, that's like, 3 times I've been kicked out of heaven. But I kept going back. I remember, and this story, I just love telling this last experience because it gave me my validation. It allowed me to validate my experience.